Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're picking up. We're going to talk about the kingdom of the Antichrist. Sort of an extenuation of yesterday's, where we talked about how the world's being prepared for the Antichrist. But now we're going to look at his kingdom and see where does it cover. Because the common, if you watch Tribulation movies and follow off Bible prophecy teachings, eschatology, and the like, you'll often see scenarios where his kingdom covers the whole earth. And or it's centered in America or perhaps in Europe somewhere, and his capital will be there. And that's a very common scenario. That's a very common scenario, and some common places for his capital be proposed to be is New York City, because the UN, he takes over basically the UN and his capital's there, or Rome, because association with the Roman Catholic Church. That's of course, Rome's the capital of the Roman Catholic Church, and many other places. But it's almost, and usually it covers the entire earth. Well, we're going to look and see what the Bible has to say about this, the Book of Truth, and we're going to start by looking at Revelation chapter 13, where a lot of people get a lot of these. The basis of this idea, at least of it being a global empire, from this empire covers the whole earth, and we're just going to see what it says there and see why people would think and why people would think this. Does this really indicate this in Revelation chapter 13? We're going to look at verses. We're going to start in verses 1 through 4. And I sit upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 horns and 10 heads. And upon his 10 heads, upon his horns, 10 crowns. And upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet were like a bear, as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the feet of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and in great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So we'll explain these animals here, but notice this conglomeration. It has a body like a leopard, but its feet are like those of a bear, and his mouth, though, is like that of a lion. And when you talk about these animals, the power of a leopard is its speed. It's agile and quick body. Its power is in its paws, its feet. Yes, of course, they can bite you and do some tearing and whatever. But when someone talks about someone being, killed by a bear, they're mauled. Those giant paws with those claws can just rip a man to shreds, and dismember him in a matter of moments. If it's a large bear like a grizzly bear or a Kodiak, even a smaller bear, they'll rip open they'll rip someone up with their claws. A lion kills with its mouth. Its power is with its mouth. And these things speak of something here. When you're talking about a kingdom, because they're pictures of a kingdom. Speed, power, and the mouth speaks of commanding and being organized. And we'll see how this applied to some previous kingdoms, but this kingdom here has all those characteristics. And the dragon, of course, is a picture of Hashatan, Satan. And the seat, here's the capital. So it gives us this beast, and the beast again as a twofold picture of a kingdom and the one that rules the kingdom. And the one that rules this kingdom, or in which is often used of an empire, The difference being an empire is a king over other kings, an emperor is a king over other kings, is which we see here. These 10 horns, these 10 crowns speak of 10 kings. So it's an empire, and the one that's ruled this empire gets his authority from Satan. Satan gives him his capital or his power. So his power to rule is freedom from Satan, and he's going to have some sort of supernatural power and great authority. It all comes from Satan. And these heads, and we'll explain what these heads are a little bit later. But one of them is wounded to death, and of course, head also speaks of ruling of some sort of authority as well. So, and this head that's wounded is, of course, the same one, the Antichrist. So it appears he's dead, or appears to be dead, and God, and he's raised back from the dead, or at least it appears that way to the world. So because of that, notice people don't worship just the Antichrist; they worship they're going to worship Satan, and Satan is who gave the Antichrist his authority. And no one can make war with him. He's gonna exceed in war in every manner, his empire. Now we're going to look at Revelations chapter 13, 5 through 8, and we're going to continue in Revelation chapter 13, I should say, in verses 5 through 8. And reading, and notice this here. And all the world wondered. Notice the expression, all the world. So from this people draw, it means everyone on the entire planet. All the world means everyone on the planet. So this is, this kind of gives the idea of a worldwide empire, if you understand it that way. Now let's continue on with in Revelation chapter 13 and verses 5 through 8. And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. It was given to make war with all the saints and overcome them, and power was given them over all kindreds and nations and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. So notice that. Now, first thing I want you to notice is here is after he speaks this blasphemy, he's only going to continue 42 months or 3.5 years. That's super important to notice, and why we discussed this last time, because the Antichrist is going to blaspheme against God, and by declaring himself God in the temple of God. That's he's going to blaspheme God in his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven, being the believers and the angels and everyone else that's on God's side. He's going to stand in the temple of God, and declare himself to be God. And after that, he's going to make war on the saints. So we know there's believers on the earth. So not everyone is worshiping him. We can tell right away. Those who worship him are those who are not. And people can start off worshiping someone and not continue worshiping them, or whatever. People convert and change religions and whatever, all the time. That's when we spread the gospel. That's the whole thing. We're bringing them out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. There's a change of worship, right? But at this point, everyone's worshiping except those who are not believers. When they up to this point, when he blasphemes because of these things, and there's going to be a change when that happens. Now we're going to continue on in Revelation chapter 13, Now, in verses 11 through 15. And I beheld another beast come out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders, so that he makes fire to come down from heaven and earth in sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, they should make an image of the beast which had the wound by a sword, and did live. He had given power of life, and he had given life into the image of the beast, and the image of the beast that should both speak and cause, and they would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay, so notice those who are the image of the beast. This is the image is speaking, and we talked yesterday about this could be an icon. So the Greek word is, and today we see this all the time. Images speaking, like like on television and whatever, all this time. So of course, in John's day, looking to the future, this would have been miraculous. It could be just like as simple as that, but it could also be some sort of a android or something of that nature, or it could be totally supernatural as well. But regardless, it's this image that kills people. Okay, those who will not worship it. Notice it's the image of the beast that does the killing. And notice it says causes the earth and him to dwell in. Now, what causes it? What causes it? This false prophet. And notice he has two horns like a lamb. What's that remind us of? Well, the Lamb of God, Yeshua. And he's going to come on softly and have all those good people skills we'll talk about. And he's going to have all this body language and this nonverbal communication that's going to put people at ease to listen. But notice this, but his words are deceptive. Okay, so his words are not really matching his body language. I mean, he's gonna. I'm sure he's gonna use a soft voice in all those things, but the content of his words are deceptive. That's why he speaks like a dragon, like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And what's his goal? To get people to worship the Antichrist. And God's gonna let signs and wonders to confirm it. Because remember, we saw in Deuteronomy, if you refer 13, the first 4 verses or so of that chapter, it tells us that God will allow false prophets to arise and even perform signs and wonders to test to see if we'll cling to him and his word or not. As we discussed yesterday, that's why only the elect's not going to be deceived. Okay, so and notice it's the earth. So this worship of the Antichrist is global, it's telling us. And because his worship's global, because the worship of him is global, people said, well, therefore his kingdom is also global. So we've seen his expressions, all the world, and all the world's again worshiping him. It says, all the world's like, who can make war against him? All over the earth, people are worshiping him. So because of these reasons, people say his kingdom is global. Well, first of all, let's look at that expression, all the world, and see if that means the entire everyone on planet, or what in the world means in this context. And we're going to first get our first confirmation of this, improve our understanding by looking at Luke chapter 2, verse 1. It came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. Okay, that word "world" is not geo, the word for earth, like we get the word or Gaio. Sometimes people pronounce it Gaio. Where we get the word geology from. Okay, it's not the planet. It's cosmos, although we use that sort of a cosmonauts, cosmopolitan, but also of cosmology, study of space. But it's actually we get like the word cosmopolitan from the social world, or yeah, the social world, or the civilized, or the civilization. So all the civilization or all the empire, it means the Roman Empire in this case. Caesar Augustus was not taxing the Incans and the Mayans and the whoever in North and South America and the Aztecs, and he wasn't taxing the Chinese or the various empires and kingdoms that were in India, and wasn't taxing the people down in Tanzania and so on, in Africa and Australia, and the Aborigines in Australia, and so on and so forth. He was only taxing inside the Roman Empire. So all the world in this context means the Roman Empire. So the expression all the world does not necessarily mean the entire earth. And we see this again in Romans chapter 1, verses 7 through 8. To all that be in Rome, beloved of God, called to be saints, grace be to you and peace from God our Father and the world and the Lord Jesus Christ. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all your faith is spoken of throughout all the world. Okay, at the time of the Apostle Paul, their faith was not being spoken of, or Shaul, if you prefer, was not being spoken of in North America, South America, Australia, China, etc. I mean, at best, it could have been spoken by, there may have been a few believers in Lulang, China, the capital, through trade of the Silk Road, perhaps in India. But as far as Africa goes, along the north coast of Africa and the east coast was some sort of Christianity and civilization potentially, all the way down to at least Anzia, which is the modern day Tanzania. There was trade down that far at least, and definitely the apostles went to India, but it did not include most of Africa, except again along the northern eastern coast areas. The rest of it was in total darkness as far as the gospel went. And of course, North and South America and Australia and all those Pacific islands, except would be the same thing. So their faith isn't being spoken of throughout the entire planet. He means the Roman Empire, and that was certainly plausible by this point. 54 AD is when Christianity first came to Great Britain on the westernmost part of the Roman Empire, or northwestern, really, most part of the Roman Empire. Obviously, you stretch down the other direction, Jerusalem's not far from the border, but even later, when trade, this is later, but so it actually covers all the Roman Empire. It's true, it's been spoken throughout the entire Roman Empire. Their faith, people have known about this, because Rome, all roads lead to Rome, as the expression goes. And everyone in the Roman Empire has, and has heard about these Christians there in Rome. Particularly, they're particularly you hear about them more when Nero sets fire to Rome. But they've heard of them, so their faith is spoken of throughout the Roman Empire. And of course, it could be also included in the Parthian Empire and these other places I mentioned, but not the entire planet. So all the world does not mean the entire planet, unless the context perhaps indicates that. But on its own, you have to consider the context of the point, the expression. Now, we're going to continue on in looking in Revelation chapter 3, verses 10 through 12. And we're going to see, a context where all the world does apply to all the planet. And we'll see what it is that's applying to all the planet here. And this is, again, Revelation chapter 3, verses 10 through 12. Because you have kept the word of my patience, I'll also keep from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly, and hold fast that which you have, that no man take your crown. I will overtake him that overcomes. I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. He shall go out no more. And I'll write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which comes down to the heaven of earth, and I'll write upon him my new name. Interesting point of interest, Messiah is going to get a new name. And perhaps he does not even know what it is himself at this point. So we're going to be marked by God himself as belonging to him and part of his system in the end. Just note that for future reference, because you'll see where, well, we talked about the mark yesterday, how the world's being prepared, but we're getting a mark also from God himself that show we're part of his system, not part of the world system. A little note to tie us back to yesterday's lesson. Now, but notice the expression, all the world, to them that dwell on the earth. Well, every human being on earth dwells on the earth. So all the world in this context does mean the entire earth. But what is coming? The hour of temptation, which is the tribulation. It's the tribulation that's going to come, that's going to test everyone on earth. Test them for what? Will they cling to God, or will they, or they're going to go with Satan? They're going to be put in a position where they got to make a choice. Definite choice, one way or the other. Now, because of that, people have said, well, see if all the tribulations over all the earth, then his kingdom, the Antichrist kingdom, must also be all over all the earth. Okay? That would seem to support the idea of his kingdoms all over all the earth. But notice so far, we've only looked at things in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, mostly the book of Revelation, which quotes the Tanakh, or the Old Testament. For every 3 verses in the book of Revelation, there's 4 quotes from or references to the Old Testament. Some are just more references or allusions to the Old Testament, particularly the Nevi'im, or the prophets. No, that is to say, the prophets. So as a pastor of mine used to say, it's time to look in the thick slice of the book and see, and to get the context, to see what that if that and the thick slice supports this ideal or not, because we can't really understand Revelation without understanding the prophets, because it can constantly refer to the writings. And here's the first place, and here's where we're going to look at, begin with Daniel chapter 7, verses 3 through 7, where those beasts we talked about at the very beginning, what's referencing him, and that'll help us understand what those beasts were in this kingdom. And 4 great beasts came out of the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, had eagle's wings, and I beheld the wings of it were plucked, and it was lifted up in the air, and made it stand up like a feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Behold, another beast, a second like a bear, and it raised up on itself on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of its teeth between it. 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said unto me, arise and devour. They said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. And I beheld, lo, another like unto a leopard, which had upon its back 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And after I saw this in night visions, beheld the 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It brake into pieces, devoured and broke into pieces, and stamped the rest of the feet with it. It was diverse from all the beasts, therefore, before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay, so these beasts, one comes up after another, and the first one here is represents Babylon. We can see this from other references. The Bible plainly spells it out for us. It's Babylon, the kingdom of the empire of Babylon, the Babylonian Empire. And interesting, their symbol on the processional way in the ruins of Babylon today, you can still see it. It's a winged lion. and all this thing about the man's is a man's heart's given to it. Well, that's all talking about the humbling of Nebuchadnezzar. And so this is a lion, and of course it was a highly command structure. What the king said went, and it was highly organized, and that's how they conquered the Assyrians who were before them. They were just they beat them by they beat them out by logistics and just being better organized. So but after them came the Persian Empire, and Persia, in the era of Persia, even today, the Eurasian brown bear, and it was known for particularly large, fierce ones, in particularly what's northern Iran today. Even today, the brown bear is still there, and they're perhaps the largest ones in Asia. They're not as big as a grizzly or a Kodiak bear here in North America, but as far as the old world goes, they're the most vicious, largest, most vicious ones that perhaps there are. Russia may have some that's just as large, but they were particularly known for this, and also just for being more aggressive, perhaps, than brown bears other places as well. And it's the Persian Empire, and they beat out the Babylonian Empire just because they were stronger. They came upon them in great strength and just tore them apart just tore them apart by just overwhelming strength, basically. Well, the next one after that was the Greek Empire, and Alexander the Great conquered the entire Persian Empire. I want to say it was 3 years. It may have been 7. I think it was 3 years' time. And they did it by what the Germans would later call Blitzkrieg, lightning war, where notice the four wings, double speed, okay, and the 4 heads, because the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great died split into 4 mini empires. So this is the Greek Empire. Now, this 4th one is twofold, or represents perhaps the same empire to an extent in 2 phases. In the beginning one is the Roman Empire. It took over the four empires of the Greek Empire. Now, the back part of the Seleucid Empire took over the eastern part, that is to say, first away from the rest, got taken over by the Parthians. But the part that matters, the part near Israel, was taken over by the Romans. And the rest of it was taken over by the Romans. And and even they even retook a lot of it. That was saying about the Seleucids. They went all the way over to the Euphrates River and all the way down to the coast. And all these empires, by the way, had in their control at some time the areas of Egypt, Assyria, Israel, and Babylon. They all had those. They may have had more. They had more, and then branched out different directions. But they all had controls of those at some point in their history in those areas. So this tells us this beast that has all these characteristics. The range of the extent of his empire, at the largest, would be indicated to be everything that's covered by at least one of those empires. The Persian Empire went from India to Ethiopia. So you'd be talking about, we covered the area today of India, Pakistan, Iraq, India, Iraq, India, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Ethiopia, not to mention Egypt and Iraq. The Babylonian would cover Iraq, Syria, as I mentioned today, Jordan, Israel, Egypt, Ethiopia, and of course the Romans got Libya and all the way along, all the way over to Tunisia, all along the north coast of Africa. And, the Greeks, you're going up, of course, into Turkey and Greece. The Romans conquered those as well. And of course, Italy, France, Spain, England, even Germany. Part of Germany was conquered by the Romans. Belgium, etc. Okay, all are conquered by the Romans. So that's the largest area. The smallest would be the area that all these empires covered. Not that at least one covered, but one that all four of them covered, which I've already described. So that kind of gives it an idea that his empire is somewhere within those boundaries. Now they'll say, well, okay, it starts off there and it covers the whole world. Well, we shall see. Now let's look at Daniel chapter 7, verses 18 through 22. We're going to continue on here in Daniel, I should say, in chapter 7, verses 18 through 22. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which did devour and break in pieces and stamp the residue with his feet. And the 10 horns that were with his head, and the other which came up, before whom 3 fell. Even a horn had eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, prevailed against them. So the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came the saints possessed the kingdom. Okay. So we have these events leading up to the saints taking the kingdom here. And this now the fourth beast here. First was Rome, but now there's a continuation, a revival, if you will, perhaps of Rome in some regard, of the Roman Empire in some regard. And this is, notice, the teeth of iron speaks of Rome. Nails of brass speaks of Greece, but not exactly. Greece was Bronze Age warrior. And I don't know if this word's brass, but if it's brass, bronze is a mixture of copper and tin. Not near, kind of easily taken out by an iron sword. But these nails, and of course that means claws. Okay, it's a beast, right? These claws are brass, and brass is copper and iron mixed together. So there's this ideal here of the power of Rome and the speed of Greece combined in doing these things, and causing all this destruction. But notice it doesn't start off this way. This beast doesn't start off with the Antichrist ruling. You have 10 kings, and these 10 kings are in some sort of confederation. And then one comes up who was not one of them and takes over 3 of them. He's in a very quick manner takes over 3 of the kingdoms. And then, of course, then the other 7 are going to submit to him. Well, that one's the Antichrist, and that one makes war against the saints, as we talked about earlier. And he's going to do this the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, as we talked about before. And then his time's going to come to an end. Now we continue on in Daniel chapter 7, in verse 23 through 26. And thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and tread it down, and break in pieces. And 10 horns of his kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and there shall rise after them. He shall be diverse from the first, and shall do 3 kings. He shall he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall rout the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given until a times, and dividing a time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Okay, this fourth beast here, again, is now we're talking about not the Roman Empire, but the empire of the Antichrist, which again has characteristics of and perhaps a Greco-Roman worldview. That's very important to understand, because that's, you know, that's the base of technology. And we talked about his technological craftiness, you know, particularly the Greeks. The Greeks pretty much invented math, science, and history all on their own. And you know, the rest of the world is gone from what they learned from the Greeks. And you know, the Romans included, who there's no other case in history where one culture conquered another was so obsessed with the culture it conquered as the Romans were with the Greeks. So, you know, it speaks perhaps of the science and these kind of things that the Greeks have brought in literature too, as well, for that matter, like as far as plays and things like that. You know, so all that kind of thing. So this sort of thing here, the king hears, but now he's got these 10 kings arise, and those he subdues them again. We talked about, and people now look at this and they say, devour the whole earth, and say, see, he can control the whole earth. I mean, he does say he devours it, but you know, what's that? You know, devour, does that mean he rules it? Well, it can mean he goes to war and causes it. You know, and we call them World War I and World War II, and we can say Hitler devoured the whole earth through World War II. He didn't rule the whole earth, but he devoured it. And of course, the rule, even though that's a little misnomer, because World War II did not really cover every country on earth. It wrapped around the globe, as did World War I. But you know, a World War III is coming when the Antichrist here arises, and it's gonna get every country involved, and gonna kill people, and people. Every nation is gonna lose people in this thing, and you know, and be broken, and you know, have and be just, and perhaps not. That doesn't mean they're gonna be conquered. They are definitely going to be, you know, they're definitely going to be involved in a war that destroys many of their people and destroys their armies and these kind of things by this Antichrist. But people said, well, see, that means that, so therefore he's going to be able to take over the whole earth. Okay. Well, if that's all the Bible to say about it, it'd be kind of shut and dry, or shut and closed, I should say. But let's just take a look and let's continue reading and see if that's what it's what it means by devour the whole earth. It means he's going to rule the whole earth. Well, let's just see. We're going to go to the next chapter in Daniel, chapter 8, and go down to verses 9 and 11, where he has another vision. And one out of them, or perhaps it's a dream, anyways. Out of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the pleasant land. It waxed great even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the host and the stars of the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magned himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Okay. This little horn we just saw is the Antichrist. And notice the direction he pushes. He's building his empire. The south, the east, and towards the pleasant land. Well, that's Israel. Now, if he's not pushed to the south and going to Israel, he's not pushed towards the east in Israel. That means his empire can't be west of Israel or north of Israel. His seed has to be south of Israel, which wouldn't make much sense, because then there wouldn't be much to push going towards the east if he's in Africa. You got the Indian Ocean there, so you got to have land to the east. So it's got to be west of Israel, and then, of course, you know, that would be Jordan, Iraq, Iran. You're just going straight across there. Jordan, Iraq, Iran. East of Israel, because it's moving west. I'm sorry. So that's the east of Israel. So you got Jordan, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, India, so on and so forth, going east. Okay. Well, it can't be all way over there too far east, because he's going to he's going to expand his empire towards the east, and he's going to expand towards the south. Now, the south there, of course, means also with respect to Israel, so that'd be Africa. So therefore, what's logical, what's most likely, what's closest to Israel, but to the west would be Iraq and Jordan. And it's not Jordan. We'll show you in a minute here. It cannot be Jordan. And so it brings us to the idea of what's modern day Iraq. Okay. And so this tells us that if he's pushing towards those things, expanding those directions, but he's not expanding north, where Russia would be, or Turkey, or from Israel's perspective, Lebanon, Syria. Okay. Perhaps, but certainly he couldn't. His empire couldn't go all the way up to Russia, and couldn't go, and he couldn't include everything, because he couldn't have nowhere to push towards if he really controlled it all. And when's this pushing go? And this pushing goes on until the daily sacrifice is taken away, and his conquests come to an end. Well, if he's been pushing these two directions all that time, it means his empire cannot be the whole world. And his efforts to conquer the world come to the abrupt end here. Now, we'll continue reading about him in Daniel chapter 11, where Daniel has another vision about him, or dream, whichever it is, in verse 38 through 41. And in his estates shall he honor the God of forces. A God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall do in the most strongholds, with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. He shall cause him to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen, with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. And he shall also enter into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Okay, we'll start from the top. The Father, the God of forces here, and that should be a little g. Not in English, the big G is reserved for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is plainly not him. He's the Antichrist we're talking about, and we don't have to speculate. We've already saw who he worships. He worships Satan. That's this God of forces. That's this strange God that his fathers knew not. So he said, well, it's talk about it's Allah or something. No, Allah, his fathers, his ancestors. If he was a Muslim, his fathers would be worshiping Allah. It wouldn't be a strange God to them. It wouldn't be someone his fathers did not know. And also, the word Allah is a little confusing, because if you get an Arabic New Testament, and you look up the word for God, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is also called Allah, because that's just the word for God in Arabic. It's like God's the word for God in English, and that's why the lowercase and uppercase G to distinguish. So, it's not Allah, it's Satan, as we've already seen. Now, if he's going to increase in, he's going to cause people to rule over many. Now notice here. Now, next thing, notice there's two kings. The two kings are going to coordinate, or perhaps one's going to initiate, and the other one's going to take advantage of it. They're going to come against him from opposite directions. One from the south. If his kingdom's worldwide, there can't be any kingdoms to the south. He has the whole world. There's nothing south. There's nothing north of him. There's a kingdom of the north as well, and they're going to come at him at the same, perhaps the king of the south is going to start first, and the king of the north is going to see his opportunity and come down from the other direction. So he's going to enter into these countries. Remember, he's pushed to the east, and now he's going to the south. Well, he's going to the south, and he's going to pass. He's going to overflow, and he's going to enter the glorious land. And we talked about yesterday how Israel is going to be taken by surprise, because he's going to tell them he's just passing through. Well, this is why he's just passing through. He has in his kingdom lands in Africa, which we'll show. And there's now there's other lands in Africa, or perhaps even ones that he's conquered. They're pushing him. They're pushing at him, and so he's going to enter the glorious land. But the problem is he's going to stay there. But notice, without a doubt, these three ethnic groups, and they form today the country of Jordan. In fact, the country of Jordan's capital is Amman, named here after Ammon, the son of Lot, through his daughter, through one of his daughters. Moab being another one. Edom being Esau, Israel's brother. Those three, their territory today makes up the country of Jordan. If he's ruling the whole world, then Jordan, it would include the country of Jordan. It's part of the earth. His kingdom is plainly not covering the whole earth. It's not even covering the whole Middle East. The country of Jordan escapes. So let's see if we get some more clues. Where does he rule exactly? He shall stretch forth his hands upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver and all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go with great fury to destroy and to utterly make away many. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. He shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Okay. Now, so the glorious holy mountain is the Temple Mount. The seas refer to the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. He's between, sometimes called the Great Sea in the Bible. That's why he's between, okay? So it's talking about him being on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. His tabernacles, his palace, his royal command tent. Typical in the army, you have tents. People when they travel, of course, out of necessity, and it's not unusual for the officers to have a bigger tent, and someone who's in charge. Well, he's got this really fancy tent, like a palatial-like tent there. And he's going to put this, and this is going to be his headquarters during his phase of first conquering, and then we're dealing with these crises. So he's being attacked from three sides here: the north, the south, and the east. That means there's people outside his empire on the north, the south, and the east that are causing him problems. Meaning he doesn't rule over them. But Egypt, he conquers Egypt, and perhaps that was one of his in the first place. And perhaps some of the ones that he ruled over beginning with that rebelled against him, it's possible. But he didn't ever have control over all these people. And when it says they're at his steps, that means he has his thumb over them, so to speak. He perhaps has them occupied, but they're not really in alignment with him. They're not part of those 10 kings that are in alignment with him. But Egypt perhaps was one of those 10 kings that was in alignment with him. Now so his empire is plainly not global. It's plainly limited. It's plainly in the Middle East, and it can in the greater Middle East. And it does not appear to stretch any further west than Libya, no further south than Ethiopia. And by the way, Ethiopians could refer, broadly could refer to all of Africa, actually, south of the Sahara Desert. The cities of Kush. But the Ethiopia at this time, the historical Ethiopia, included the modern day countries of Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Eritrea. Okay, so kind of give you an ideal. So maybe along again the north coast and the east coast of Africa, perhaps down to a certain extent, but not any further. But not any further than perhaps the source of the Nile in Uganda, perhaps the furthest. So this tells us a lot about the limits of his empire. Now we're going to talk about his capital, because I've talked about at the beginning. He'll have these ideals: New York City, Rome. Those are the two most common, perhaps. But there's also other scenarios. Some, Washington D.C. is sometimes bantered around, or London, or some other city in Europe, perhaps even in Eastern Europe. But let's just see where his capital is. Isaiah 14, verses 4 through 8. You shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers. He smote the people with wrath and a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hinders. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, you are laid down. No fellow has come up against us. Okay, so notice this king of Babylon, I'll show you in a minute, is the Antichrist. And it's kind of continued here. He's ruled these nations. Well, where's his capital? He's called the king of Babylon because that's his capital, the city of Babylon. Now, people have said, well, that's code for Rome, or it's people will try to justify saying Peter was the Roman Catholic Church maintains he was crucified in Babylon, but in Rome, but his own letter says he died in Babylon. They'll be like, oh no, that was code for Rome, instead of actually meaning Babylon, which was a city at the time, which was a city till like 750 AD. As a matter of fact, occupied, if I remember correctly. It was quite a while after. I remember that. Anyways, it was occupied. It was certainly occupied at his time. There was a seat of Jewish learning there. The Babylonian Talmud came from there 300 years later, etc. Big Jewish population there. But nonetheless, they'll say, well, if Babylon is somewhere, is code for someplace else, whatever. No, Babylon means Babylon, as in the city in Iraq. And I'll show this in a moment. But notice that Lebanon there is mentioned. So Lebanon may be one of these 10 countries. Because these 10 countries seem to be all inside what we call the greater Middle East, all Muslim-controlled countries today, or predominantly Muslim countries today. So Babylon is his capital. Now we're going to show this some more by looking at Isaiah further down, chapter 14, verses 22 through 26. To clarify this, to just nail it down. For I will rise up against them, says the Lord host, and cut off from Babylon the name of the remnant, the son and nephew, says the Lord. I'll make it the possession for the bittern and the pools of water, and I shall sweep with the bosom of destruction, says the Lord of hosts. The Lord has sworn, surely as I have thought, and so it shall come to pass, and as I have purposed, so it shall stand. I'll break the Assyrian in my land, and upon my mountains tread him underfoot. Then his yoke shall depart from off of them, and his burden depart from off their shoulders. This is the purpose upon the whole earth, and this is the hand that's stretched out upon all the nations. Okay. Now, the word nephew there, I want to clarify. In Old King James English, nephew meant grandson. So there's no one left there. In another passage we looked at before, it's sort of the land of Babylon, not just the city. Now, but even just the city today, you can go to the ruins of Babylon, as I mentioned, go to Processional Way, and go and follow it, and see the temple of Marduk at the end with the winged lions and all this business. And it's plainly not. Look at bitterns are swamp-dwelling birds, okay? Pools of water. There are not, the ideal is you got a marsh there, a swamp, something like that. There's no pools of water there. It's not, another place, it's not even the Arabs live there. Well, the Arabs will camp there right now. And it's not just totally wilderness. In fact, there's a city right over there from it. It's an archaeological park, and it's, right next to it practically is a city in the land of Babylon. And the whole land is to be destroyed and become like Sodom and Gomorrah and so on and so forth, no one inhabiting it. Well, there's a large city there. This is not a past event, as some people will try to say. If you believe what it says and take it literally, and say God means what he says and means what he says what he means and means what he says, you guys can see this is a future event. And Babylon will be rebuilt, to be destroyed. And notice the Antichrist is called the Assyrian. And this is the only ethnic identity that's ever given to him. He is called the Assyrian directly or indirectly. Like here, he's called the Assyrian, and then his refers to him, okay? His meaning the Assyrian, indirectly. 23 times in the Bible. He's not American. I'll tell you, I guess an American could happen because if you go by ancestry to the fathers, but he's not. He's not a European. He's not someone of European ancestry. Now, he may have a European look because ancestry is primarily counted to the fathers. And in the Middle East, the rulers of all these nations, like Syria, for example, have been purposely for almost 100 years now been marrying European women. And the paler their skin, the better. And the whole point is to make their sons look more and more European looking. Why? So the Europeans and Americans will find them more acceptable or whatever, or more similar to them in their appearance, but in their heart and in their root character, they are not Europeans, because the lineage of their fathers is through these Middle Eastern people groups. So even though the Assyrian could look very pale, could have very pale skinned because of this purposeful intermarrying of European women, of again, the lighter the skin tone, the better, as far as people are concerned. Like Princess Gracie way back when, and just go on and so forth. And again, it's been purposeful, on purpose for this reason. But they are not European in their thinking, and they're not European at all in their religion or anything else like that. They may look European on the outside, but they're not European on the inside. So he is an Assyrian. And this purpose on the whole earth is to get rid of him. And of course, the tribulation, he's part of it. He brings a great amount of destruction, but he doesn't bring all the destruction of the tribulation. And we'll look at that in a moment here. Now, we go to Revelation chapter 14 verses 8 through 11. And we're going to see some more about his capital being destroyed in particular. And they're following their angels, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed with a loud voice. If any man worship the beast of his image, receive his mark in his forehead or his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment descends up forever and ever. And they shall have no rest day and night who worship the beast or his image. whosoever receives the mark of his name. Okay, when Babylon's fallen, notice, now if it's the whole world, Babylon's singled out here. And then notice the mark of the beast, and this why the right hand or forehead? Because people are manual laborers, meaning with their hands, whether like maybe people say white collar workers, whatever, with their heads, and the part of your head where the logic everything is in the front of your head, in the frontal lobe. So when you receive that mark, you're marking yourself, your labor and everything. Your purpose is to serve the Antichrist, as we discussed yesterday. So this mark, notice this torment is only going to be for those who took this. That's mentioned right here at this time. Now we know that the only people that were tormented with fire and brimstone, but they're particularly separated out. And those who take that mark, I mean, that's it. Could they repent? Perhaps. You said you could cut off your hand. Better to enter life without a hand than not to. Perhaps they could, cut off that piece of their forehead somehow. I don't know. But whoever has it at this time is doomed. That's what this angel's announcing. So, but his capital is the point here. It's fallen. Babylon is his capital. Without a doubt. Now we continue, and we mean literally Babylon. And it's not far-fetched. Saddam Hussein's already rebuilt the walls before he came down. He was saving up money to rebuild the whole city using his oil money. The Antichrist will be super wealthy and have no problem with modern technology and with no kinds of red tape in the way. A huge city can be built in a year. And it's a great city. And it's probably going to be the most populous city on earth, at least up to that point. More populous than Tokyo, Japan. More densely populated, perhaps. But it's definitely going to be huge and tall. Tallest buildings in the world are in Singapore and Dubai right now. And it's going to have huge buildings. Without a doubt. His capital is Babylon, and it can be rebuilt and will be rebuilt. Now, Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2 through 7, we're going to look at some more areas where he's not ruling specifically. And we'll show this. And we're going to start in Ezekiel 38, chapter 38, I should say, verses 2 through 7. Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus is the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn you back with hooks in your jaws, and I'll bring you forth with all your army, and horses and horsemen, all of them clothed in all sorts of armor, even a great company of bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia and Ethiopia and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with you. Be you prepared and prepare for yourself, you and all your company assembled you, and be you a guard unto them. And first thing I want you to notice is ethnic groups, is how he didn't address us by nations like Iran or Iraq, or unless they have the same ethnic group, but like we might say, he doesn't address them by national names like that, but by the ethnic groups that occupy them. There's the land of Magog. Okay, now your face is against Gog, who's the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Moscow is named after Meshech, and that is it was the capital of Russia, the part of modern Russia that's in Europe for a very long time. and it's the capital. It's the capital. It's the capital. Okay, it's named after Meshech. So Russia, the part of Russia today that's in Europe, makes up 40% of Europe. It's the largest country in Europe by a long shot. When you feel about Eastern Europe, really, Russia's pretty much all of Eastern Europe. We're part of Central, for that matter. Now, when you talk about, now, who's Tubal? Tubal is that part of Russia today that's in Asia. That was Siberia. People, when you're on the Siberian Trans-Siberian Railroad and blah, that's the part of Russia that's in Asia. It was a separate country called Siberia once upon a time, and its capital was Tobolsk, named after Tubal. It's on the Tobol River, named after Tubal as well. So Magog is the ruler of them today. If this was happening today, that'd be Vladimir Putin is referred to as Gog. Now, what's this land of Magog? It's associated with him. Perhaps the ruler is going to come of Russia is going to come from there or have some tie with him. Magog is modern day Kazakhstan, and it's those area. Remember, these are, now notice, these are all descendants of Japheth we're talking about here so far. They're all descendants of Japheth. He has 7 sons. Here's 3 of them. So we're talking about, they could represent, and because some people groups, it wouldn't be just Kazakhstan necessarily, but other people groups inside the former Soviet Union, in the Asia part of the former Soviet Union in particular, that are ethnically or genetically related to Kazakhstan today. So the Antichrist is not ruling these, and I'll show you why we say that in a minute here. He's not ruling these. These were going to invade Israel. Now, who else? Persia. And that, again, I told you about modern day Iran. It was the Elamites in southern Iran. But who's ruling them today? They're called Iran, which comes from the word Aryan, which was a tribe. Which was a tribe of Meshech, I'm sorry, not Meshech, of Madai, of the Medes. So they're named for the Medes. Today, the Medes have the upper hand. You always have that in Persia, where the Persians and the Medes work together, but there's intrigue, and one's taking charge over one gets in charge, and the other one gets in charge. So today, the Medes have the upper hand. Perhaps in the future, the Persians will. Ethiopian Lebanon, remember that his footsteps. They're under occupation, but they're going to break free. Or perhaps they join his coalition to break free. And perhaps same thing with Persia, who of course has that connection to Gomer through Madai, to the Medes. And we'll go back to Gomer in a minute. Togarmah is of the north quarters. When you're going from Israel, you go straight north. First of all, Moscow's almost exactly on the same latitude as Israel. You just go straight north, you hit Moscow. What's between it and Moscow? What's between Jerusalem and Moscow? You got Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Russia, just like that. But Russia we've already identified. North of Israel, the north quarters would be Turkey. And again, the Turkish people identify themselves as all being descendants of Togarmah. And Greater Turkey, as they call it, the lands of all the Turkish people include all the way to Turkey, all the way over to Turkmenistan, and perhaps even a little east. They were originally in Mongolia. The oldest Turkish writing in the world was in Mongolia. But the Mongols come from Uli, from Ul, or Hul, depending which where you see an H or not. And Shem, and the Chinese, they lived in Manchuria. The Chinese went to Manchuria. The Han did, drove into Mongolia. They drove the Huns, as they call them, the Hanu. We call them Huns. The Turks went all the way west, and invaded Europe and so on and so forth, like under Attila the Hun. These are the Turkish people. And again, so what would be is former Soviet Union states like Turkmenistan, that's the country, but particularly the country of Turkey, dead north of Israel. The house, the capital is Ankara. Oh, yeah, is it Ankara? Yeah, I think it's Ankara. It's the capital. Anyway, it is almost dead north, okay, of Israel. So this is what we're talking about. So the Antichrist does not rule these, and I'll show you again in a moment why. It'll be apparent why he cannot be ruling these. But Gomer is the most interesting one of all. Gomer is a son of Japheth, and his descendants include the Norwegians, the Scandinavian, Tiras, Ashkenaz, Ripafan, Tiras, I guess, came from him also. Anyways, his descendants include Northern Europe and most of Europe west, okay? Not the Slavic people who also came from Meshech, okay? So you basically now have all of Europe, North Asia, the northern half of Asia, as not being in there. But also Gomer and his bands. What's this band's business? Because Gomer into the Visigoths these Germanic tribes like the Visigoths overran the Roman Empire. And eventually the Visigoths, the Castilians, who ended up ruling Spain, came from the Visigoths. Portuguese, the ruler came from the Visigoths. They were also from Gomer. Also came the Celts, as well as the Germans. And so you have the English. You're talking about England, and so on, and the Franks, the Germanic tribe, the Franks took over in that part and became known as France, Kingdom of the Franks. Italy, the Visigoths. The last one was the Lombards, and Italy today is ruled by descendants of the Lombards. Again, Germanic people have taken over all of Europe. So we're talking about all of Europe here is included, except arguably Greece at this point. But even the kings of Greece are descendants of Gomer. The last king was, I should say. And there's a tie. They've had a tie, particularly the German, this intermarrying of royalty that were all descendants of Gomer. So, but his bands are all these people are banded with him, just like Togarmah. You got people who are not Turkish, but they're around there, and perhaps their neighbors are dominant Turkish people, so they band it with them, and that could perhaps include the elite Mongolia, possibly. So, all the Mongols would probably align themselves with China more realistically, perhaps, but perhaps align themselves with him. This is bands, but these bands of Gomer, all the rulers of all of North and South America and Australia, and for that matter, South Africa, till recently, were descendants of Gomer. Are descendants of Gomer. America's largest ethnic group, or ethnic groups, I should say, we'll put them, split them in English, Franks, are descendants of Gomer, without a doubt. Even today, even with all these people from India and whatever coming here, still the case. The rulers of everything south of the U.S. border, every single country is ruled by descendants of Gomer. They got that in their ancestry, particularly their father's line somewhere. In Canada, of course. And his bands would be anyone that's banded together with him. And right now, who's banned with the U.S. But besides those people, like Japan, for example, the Polynesian Islands, etc. So now you have basically a very good definition of what does not belong to the Antichrist, is not inside of his kingdom. And what you're left with is and Ethiopia again we cover all of sub-Saharan Africa and Libya. That term Libya there, remember ethnic groups, could include all of North Africa, west of Egypt. So he has Egypt, perhaps, and a big chunk of the Middle East, and that's it. Everything else is someone else here. And why you say, well, what about China? We'll get to them in a minute. Remember, he had to go fight with someone to the east. Well, China's definitely as far east as you can go and still be, without leaving the continent. So now let's go forward. Let's go look at Ezekiel 39, 1-6, and see what happens to this big giant coalition led by Gog. And then again, if that happened today, that'd be Vladimir Putin, but it's not going to be. He's got ties with Russia. Him and Persia and Turkey are definitely on board with him. He's not on board in the sense of Gomer at all. We're basically at war with him right now. So, but that's kind of just gives you an idea of what kind of person Gog is. Let's see. Therefore, prophesy against Gog, son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say unto the Lord God, I'm against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will send you back and leave a sixth part of you, and will cause you to come from the north parts, and will bring you upon the mountains of Israel. I'll smite your bow out of your left hand, and will cause your arrows to fall out of your right hand. And you shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and your bands and the people who is with you, and I'll give you unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and the beasts of the field to be devoured. You shall fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, says the Lord God. And I'll set fire on Magog, and them that dwell carelessly in the isles. And they shall know that I am the Lord. Okay, so notice first of all, it's on the mountains of Israel. And particularly the Golan Heights. So they're going to invade Israel from the north, and that's where you're going to the north. That's the first place you're going to be is the Golan Heights. Now, in modern Israel, a missile is called the Hebrew word for a missile is an arrow. A missile launcher is a bow, same Hebrew word. So they're going to perhaps come there with some sort of artillery or rocket missile launchers of some sort. But those things are going to be destroyed. Who knows? Lightning, who knows how God's going to do it. Whatever is going to happen is going to be destroyed, and it's going to cause them harm themselves. And they are going to fall on the mountains. He's going to destroy them. And that's another lesson of how he destroys them. But the people of Israel are part of it, okay? He's going to rise up, but he's going to bring them upon the mountains, and they're going to fall upon those mountains. So remember this key term here, mountains, all right? Now, open field, that speaks of what? A flat place, a valley. So they're going to be in the mountains, and they're going to come down to a valley. And there are going to be so many of them, they can't all fit like in the valley. So they're up. That's why they're still up there in the mountains, some of them. So, being reserves or whatever. And notice that of these countries, that first of all, I want you to notice that 1 out of 6 is going to be left. You'll leave a sixth part of them. Well, if they all have the mark in the Kingdom of the Antichrist is worldwide, and you can't buy or sell without the mark, and they all have the mark, then 1/6 of them wouldn't be left. We already saw everyone with the mark's going to be destroyed. That alone should be absolute. That alone should make it obvious that they are not part of the Kingdom of the Antichrist, but rather going to join him in his efforts. And we'll look at how that plays out in a moment. And notice, and also I want you to notice here how Magog gets set, and then the dwell careless in the isles get set apart. Magog again is Kazakhstan and those areas around it that are descended from the same, primarily Kazakhstan today. So most of you are going to be destroyed in there, but God himself, but the destruction is going to be carried out, and perhaps through missiles or something, back to Magog. somehow Magog is like the chief instigator here. Gog is the leader of Russia. He has some tie to Magog, and he's going to Kazakhstan today, and he's going to be, and so they're going to be singled out. But also, those that dwell carelessly in the isles, and some of the isles of the Mediterranean, who were settled by the descendants of Dodaman, or the Cretans, on the like the Crete Isle down south of Greece today, and perhaps they're not even involved exactly, but another passage tells us God will judge those who stood aloof, who did nothing, instead of helping Israel, as if they were fighting against Israel. And perhaps that's the thing here. They were just hanging out, waiting for it to be over and see who they could, how they can make money off the whole thing or something. And they're just not, they don't care one way or the other. And God singles them out for destruction, to bring destruction to them. They wouldn't come to the battle, so he's taking the destruction to them. Now we're going to continue on. So the Antichrist does not control them either. Now we're going to continue on in Revelations chapter chapter 16, verses 12 through 16. And we're going to see why, these obviously are not part of the Antichrist, not part of his kingdom. Well, why would they be there then? Why would they be down there helping him? They've been fighting with him and whatever all this time. Well, let's just see here in Revelation 16, verse 12 through 16. The sixth angel poured his vial upon the great rivers Euphrates, and the water there dried up, and the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. And they are the spirits of the devils working, which go forth in the kings of the earth to the whole world, to gather them for battle that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And they gathered them out of a place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Armageddon. Okay, notice the great Euphrates, the kings of the east, it's dried up. Now remember, I told you the sixth vial is about the whole earth, not just about the king of the Antichrist. In fact, it's not about the king of the Antichrist's involvement is what? These spirits that come out of them. They deceive them. These kings of the east are east of the rivers of the river Euphrates. And perhaps they're initially trying to invade the king of the Antichrist. Remember, he's been on a fight with people from the east. And doing that, another passage, we're told they have 200 million soldiers. Well, China by itself could, but east of Euphrates also include India. 1/4 of the world's people live in, one half of the world's people live in 1/8 of the world's land, in that southwest corner or southeast quarter of Asia. From China south, India east. And they could certainly muster up an army of 200 million people, even after all the reduction in population that's occurred from all the other events of the tribulation. And they come there, but notice there's a deception that goes on. And they draw what? To bring all the whole world. In this case, the whole world means the whole earth. The kings of the earth to gather them in battle, so that all nations are coming against Israel. And where does this occur? That Armageddon is Greek because there's no H sound in Greek. It's 2 words ran together. There's no H in Greek. So you drop it when you translate from Hebrew to Greek. It's Har Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. You because it's masking, you got to put a noun at the end, and you're getting an N or an S, and they picked an N. It's it's Har Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo, the Jezreel Valley, or also the Valley of Hinnom, is right there at its base. And we're talking about the mountains of Israel, and particularly in Galilee, where Yeshua was, it was surrounded by 14 mountains, and across the Jezreel Valley is this one mountain that kind of stands out by itself. You got these mountains clumped together, and you got this big valley, the Jezreel Valley. And it makes this triangular-shaped open field that we saw earlier that Napoleon called the most perfect battlefield in the world. And so this is where they're coming to. And how they coming? They're deceived. So these spirits, well, if he rules them all, then he didn't have to deceive them into coming. He just tell them you're coming and they would come. He doesn't rule them. He does not rule all these areas. His kingdom is not global. It's limited to primarily parts of the Middle East. He didn't even have all of it because he didn't have Jordan. He didn't really have Israel. He's occupying Israel and Egypt, perhaps, and perhaps some other parts of Africa. He apparently doesn't even have Turkey. His kingdom is not worldwide at all. It's just the Middle East, primarily areas today that are Muslim dominated. And, at best it includes part of Africa, it includes part of the greater Middle East, not the entire planet. The tribulation is going to affect the entire planet. He's going to devour people from the entire planet through all these wars, but his rule is not over the entire planet. Now we're going to go back and look, and we're going to see some more evidence of this. And we're going to go back to Revelation chapter 16 and look at some of these other we just looked at the sixth vial. We're going to look at some of these others that are poured out. And we'll start here at the beginning. Again, chapter 16, verses 1 through 2. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, go your ways, pour out your vials in the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first wind poured out his vial on the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and them which worshipped his image. Okay, notice this vial, this judgment. Now, if everyone on earth was still worshiping his image at this point, there'd be no reason to single them out. It could say everyone but the saints, because that's the only one, previously we saw that wasn't. But notice that this is upon the entire earth. The entire earth, but it's not everyone on earth. It's only the people who are scattered across the earth who are worshiping him. Actually, it's only those that have that mark of the beast and worship him. So they can be taken one of two ways. Those who have both those conditions, or those who took the mark of the beast, and also those who are worshiping his image. So it's not upon everyone on earth, or we just say that. It's his worshipers who are singled out in the first vial, which is poured upon the earth. Now let's look at now we saw the sixth vial was poured upon the rivers Euphrates. So now poured on the whole earth. And let's look where this next one is. In Revelation chapter 16, we continue on down verses 10 through 11, and we see another one where it singles out the Antichrist and his kingdom. And the fifth angel poured his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnaw their tongues for pain. They blasphemed God because of their pains and their sores, repented not of their deeds. Okay, notice this one is poured out on the seat, the capital of the beast. His capital, Babylon. You know, it's only on his kingdom. It's not, if his kingdom's the whole world, there'd be no reason to distinguish it, to say this. This is number 5. Number 2, 3, and 4, which we looked at yesterday. I'm sorry, not yesterday. When we looked at tribulation preparation, we're on the whole world. On the whole earth. But these are singled out to his kingdom. And they specify the earth. This one specifies it's not the whole earth, it's his kingdom, because his kingdom does not cover the whole earth. And notice it goes from his capital and spreads out into his kingdom. Now we continue, and also I want you to notice they repent in all their deeds, indicating there's still possible to repent. And again, it might be following Yeshua's words literally, cutting their hand off so they can enter into life. Now, let's continue on in Revelation chapter 16, verses 1 through 9. And see what's going on. The angel of the Lord poured his vial out into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, "It is done." And there were voices and thunderings and lightning. There was a great earthquake, such as not upon the earth, as mighty an earthquake, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities and the nations fell. And the great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give her a cup, the wrath, the fierceness of his wrath. Okay. Now, this one here, the 7th vial, poured in the air, interestingly enough. And that's perhaps where the voice, lightning, and thunder. And then it's followed by an earthquake. And notice how great this earthquake was. You know, in California, where we talk about the big one, their idea of the big one's not even close. This is the big one. It covers the whole earth. Now, Jerusalem, some places are singled out as being different. Jerusalem's one. It's divided into 3 parts. Destroys it, and this is important because later it invites the Antichrist and his army to invade. That's how they take it. You know, this barrier of the walls, perhaps the IDF's been up there or whatever, defending it from there, falls, and they got an opening coming through. And Babylon is singled out. And we'll look at what this great Babylon is in a moment here, is singled out. But the other cities and the nations fall. The nation, that's like we talked about when I talked about tribulation, preparation. The mountains are going to be turned to dust. The islands are going to sink. The nations, the cities are going to be destroyed. And as I showed last year when I talked about Yom Kippur. I talked about setting up his kingdom, tabernacles. The state of mankind is at the end of the tribulation, all the survivors are living like refugees in tents. But notice this great Babylon's also singled out. And let's see, it's not going to be destroyed by this earthquake. And we'll look at what that means. It's twofold. It's got an entirely different ending coming to it. First of all, we're going to talk about what Babylon, what is this great Babylon? And I've said it's literally the city of Babylon, but there's another option people have looked at, and if you can complicate them into one, you're gonna have problems. You're saying, well, these are 17 and 18 are two like the 4 gospels telling the same story, 4 different viewpoints, two different viewpoints of the same story. But let's look and just see if they are. Let's look at the details. We're going to start in Revelation chapter 17, verses 5 through 9. We're going to talk about this. And we're going to talk about this one here. And upon her name or forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the Mother of Harlots and the abomination of the earth. And I saw the woman was drunk of the blood of the saints, of the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast you saw was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into the perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of Lamb, book of life, in the foundation of the world, and when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here's the mind of that is wisdom. The 7 horns are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, these 7 horns have some sort of authority in the world. That's why they're heads. Over 7 divisions, perhaps 7 dioceses, whatever the case may be. But there's 7 mountains in this city. So this is a place of 7 mountains where the woman sits, where her headquarters is. When it says someone sits there, they mean their headquarters, their capital. So now notice another characteristic of this place. This place where it sits is filled with the blood of the martyrs and the blood of the saints. Today, Vatican City is built over the Circus Maximus, it's built on the exact area on purpose, where many of the saints and martyrs were martyred. And St. Peter's Basilica is built where allegedly St. Peter was martyred. I say allegedly because they say Babylon, and there meant Rome, not Babylon. When Peter writes when Peter Pliny says Babylon, but you look at it as a letter of everywhere he went, it's all going to the east, away from Rome. You believe his own words, he never went to Rome. He went to Babylon, died there. But nonetheless, they say, well, it's figurative of Babylon. That's mystery Babylon. They'll actually tell you. Here we are, mystery Babylon the Great. The mother of harlots. Harlots are what? They're people. They're like prostitutes, but their thing is to get you into fornication, abomination on the earth, and certainly many things God calls abominable are done like at Mardi Gras and Carnival in the South, in South America, and the like. And many other things they do like this. They used to sell indulgences and all this stuff to people, prepaid forgiveness for abominations, up to and including murder. The source of this, and why? The source, because it's the religion of Babylon that Nimrod started. That religious center has transferred to another location. So the false church of Rome, it's today got 2 divisions, but remember, it started in Rome. Okay. Now they got some sort of representatives from Rome have been working with the Antichrist, and perhaps as part of this, they help with this deception business. Well, now they're not going to be able to help with it. We'll see that. But who helped him rise to power. And inside the Roman Catholic Church itself, it teaches that one of its teachings is that the false prophet is going to be an apostate pope. And some people wonder about the current one. If he is that one who's going to turn against the church. So Rome is a city of 7 mountains. The word mountains are going to be translated hills, or 7 hills. And the seat of the Pope for most of history was the Lateran Palace, actually in Rome itself on one of those 7 hills. And today there's a museum, but they still have administrative work being done there in the Lateran Palace in the area around there. And it's actually considered by a treaty signed in 1929. Is considered a part of Vatican City, even though it's separated in Rome. The Roman walls of Rome were later built around an 8th hill, Vatican Hill. But this part is still considered part of Vatican City, even though there's a geographical separation between Vatican City and it. It's considered part of it by a treaty in 1929. But nonetheless, it sits in Rome, the city of 7 hills. Interesting enough, Istanbul, Turkey, which was called Constantinople, was also purposely built on 7 hills to model the Western Rome and Eastern Rome. Let's continue on and read about this, and let's see, this, if that fits the rest of this. We're going to continue on in Revelation 17, verses 15 through 18. They said to me, the waters which you saw, where the whore sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman which you saw is that great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth. Okay, in John's day. Now, was there some king that rule over every king on earth? Of course not. But the expression there means the kings, a rule over kings of the earth, other kingdoms. Kyrios, Lord, in Greek. It's used of Messiah, but it's also used of Caesar. The Romans used it of Caesar, the Greek half-speaking half. He ruled. He was an emperor, king of kings. He ruled, that great city that ruled in John's day over these kings was Rome. And this whore sits upon the waters that was whore, not just sits on the beast, but sits upon these waters. And these waters are what? Peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. I mean, nations being ethnic groups. And indeed, the false church of Rome today is the world's largest religion. Its members, or it has churches in virtually every country on earth, and it's the majority religion in many places that are so-called, we will say Christian. They're including the false church of Rome, using the term very loosely. Anyone that calls themselves a Christian, they're counting as Christian. In fact, a lot of places where there's Protestant, they're very minority. There's only a few places where the Protestants are actually the majority. The U.S. being one of them. But even here, 38%, the largest denomination in the U.S. is the Catholic Church, 38%. The Greek Orthodox is much smaller here. But nonetheless, between them, they cover more than twice the people of Islam. At least 2 billion people, or perhaps 3. And some might even argue 4. But definitely 2 billion without a doubt. More than Islam. More than Islam and Hinduism put together. Multitudes. And people of every language, of a multitude of languages, are part of this. Without a doubt, this whore is the false church of Rome. And that city is Rome. But notice what happens to this city. The 10 horns, those kings that are ruling under the Antichrist, are going to destroy it. And they're going to burn her with fire. This thing about making her desolate and naked and eating her flesh may refer to coming in first in a military way, and taking all the treasure out of it, looting it first, destroying it, stripping it down, burying it down, and what's left after it's been looted, burning it. They are going to do this. This is very important. That it's the kings under the Antichrist who are going to do this, because they hate her, because she was sitting on them. She held pressure on them. She had them under their thumb to some degree, perhaps by persuading people in these other places that get deceived in the joining of Christ, particularly in the West. There's no mention of him fighting with people in the West, which would be the United States and stuff, and in Western Europe. Perhaps she's been using that influence, holding that over them, that she can keep them from interfering. But now, at some point, they feel confident. Perhaps when these things go out, when these deceitful things go out, perhaps earlier, and they destroy Rome, itself, they destroy mystery Babylon. Again, mystery, speaking of mystery religions, like you have in Rome, like you have in Greece, and so on and so forth, where people, ancient Greece, where the laity are given a little information, but to understand the public information, you have to have secret private information to understand it. It's called a mystery religion. In Rome, and most religions of the world operate off a basis of that other than biblical Christianity. Even Judaism does. The rabbis will say, "Oh yeah, you can't understand that right unless you study the Talmud and blah blah blah. You can't understand the Torah correctly." It's, they also have this mystery religion thing going on. So now people say, "Well, that's Rome? Okay, that's fine, but the Antichrist seats in Rome. Isn't that the same city?" Well, let's take a look. Let's go to Revelation 18 now and see what it says about the great city Babylon. And how's it destroyed? How much she glorified herself, living deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore a plague shall come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and live deliciously with her shall bewail her and torment her. Bewail her and lament for her. They shall see the smoke of her burning, saying afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for 1 hour is your judgment come. Notice the kings of the earth, which would include these 10 kings under the Antichrist, who destroyed that other Rome, who rejoiced in it, who brought about destruction and were glad of it, are mourning this destruction of this Babylon. One is not a city, as it plainly says, it's a mystery. It's headquartered in a city, Rome, the city of 7 hills. But it's not the city. This one's the city Babylon, the literal city, the great city. And again, called great. It's perhaps going to be the world's large. It's probably going to be the world's largest city, bigger than Tokyo today, which has 35 million, which is also the world's most densely populated city today. It's a mighty city. I have no doubt the world's tallest building is going to be located there. And so on and so forth. The world, and dominating a skyline, and we're told the shipmaster city, you can see 100 miles away from the ocean, the smoke of its destruction, and perhaps even the city itself, perhaps it's so tall. But the people mourning her destruction by God. God's the one who does the destroying here. Death and mourning. That speaks of a plague going through and famine. Something destroying all their food supply. Who knows? Locusts, whatever. An invasion of rats, whatever the case is. And then being burned with fire by God himself. That's why she's not destroyed with the earthquake. God has her singled out. And because of the capital of the Antichrist. And it's definitely not the city of Rome. So, in summary, we've shown without a shadow of a doubt, the king of the Antichrist is not worldwide, although the worship of him will be. He has to fight against other kingdoms, including the places rule Australia, North and South America, are all outside of his kingdom. Europe. Europe is outside of his kingdom. Even Turkey would appear to be outside of his kingdom. Russia, China. So his kingdom's in the Middle East and Egypt and perhaps a little bit more of Africa. It's large. It'd be larger than the United States is today. But it'll definitely be the dominant kingdom of the world instead of the U.S., but it's not global. And its capital is not Rome, not New York City, not, whatever city, European city you only think of, it is Babylon in modern day Iraq. And he's Middle Eastern. He may even have a European appearance through this purposeful marrying European women that's gone on by the rulers of Middle Eastern countries, or perhaps he will not. But he's definitely Middle Eastern. Assyrian, which is again, ancient Assyria again was parts of modern country, the northeast part of modern Syria, northwest part of modern Iraq, and a little bit southern part, perhaps of what's above it, even the southwest corner of Turkey, perhaps. That area up there was Assyria. He's from that area, and probably Iraq, because Babylon's also in Iraq today, in modern day. And in Mosul, right, it's across from ancient Nineveh, is in Iraq. So he's probably going to be from Iraq. That's all I have until Wednesday, on the first day of Sukkot. And we'll continue on with some discussion of these things, and we're going to look at, Lord willing, we're going to look at the mystery of the 153 fish. Why does the Bible bother to tell us exactly the 153 fish in the Gospel of John? We'll discuss that. We'll discuss that next, Lord willing. Until then, shalom.